children with additional needs in Cavan. Senator Tully.
Minister, I attended a meeting last week in a primary school in my constituency, and there's another one coming up very soon, which is actually combining a number of primary and secondary schools together. And there's a number of issues were raised at that meeting, and I know will be raised at the meeting next week. But the first one and the main one was the lack of suitable and appropriate school places for children with additional educational needs, specifically or especially autistic children, but all children with additional educational needs. One parent at the meeting said her son is in 6th class, he's autistic. She has been applying to schools looking for a suitable school placement for him, and as yet has not been informed of whether there will be one available or not. Now, all of us with children, it should be just taken as granted that when you apply to schools for them to transition from primary onto secondary school, that there will be sufficient places to accommodate their needs in their locality. Unfortunately, for children with additional needs, that isn't the case. And more often than not, we come to September and there are many students without school places at the start of the school year. I think there were 120 this year. That has reduced over the last few months, but there are still students who do not have a secondary school placement at the moment and are being educated at home, and that's not fair whatsoever. So this comes down to a severe lack of planning, and there needs to be much better cooperation and consultation between the NCSE and the Department of Education to ensure that this doesn't happen going into the future. But one of the teachers there was a special education teacher. She was put into the position of teaching in an autistic class. She had absolutely no training in teaching special education. Most teachers don't. It's not included in their primary degree. And I have to say, all of the teachers that are asked to teach in a special class do their utmost to actually upskill, and she did in her own time, at her own expense, upskill to ensure that she knew what she was doing. But that's not fair, and we need to see both continuous professional development for all teaching staff, but we also need to see specified degrees in special education being rolled out in this country to ensure that our staff are trained to deal and to be able to educate children who have additional needs, because they are wide and varied. Every child has different needs. But one thing she did point out was that prior to the setting up of the CDNTs, members of the children's development teams used to call to the school, and these were OTs, physiotherapists, speech and language therapists, and they would actually advise her and the SNAs there on practices that they could use and should use with the children. They would devise plans around the child's specific needs. That has not happened since the establishment of the CDNTs, and what makes this even worse is that the community supports that did exist for children prior to 2021 do not exist now in any shape or form. All of the parents at that meeting were able to say that their child had not seen an OT, a speech and language therapist or a physiotherapist since prior to, probably since 2019, since the child development teams were actually disbanded along with the early intervention teams in favour of the CDNTs. That structure is not working and needs to be replaced. And I think, and it's something I've been advocating for quite some time through committees and in the Dáil as well, is that there should be in-school therapies for children. And they should be in special schools, but they should also be in mainstream schools where there are special classes attached to it. And you could have a cluster of schools who would access support from a number of professionals who would go into the school, meet the children, devise plans to help them with their needs, and instruct both the teachers and the SNAs how best to help educate those children. Because as they pointed out, many of the children in their class, autistic class in the school, are either pre-verbal or non-verbal. And the biggest problem is the frustration that they cannot communicate what their needs are to the teachers, and that causes all sorts of problems, including self-harm and harming of other students and of staff, and it needs to be addressed.